In a quiet little town nestled between rolling hills and vast fields, there stood a small diner called Mama's Kitchen. It wasn't anything fancy, just a cozy place with cracked leather booths, faded wallpaper, and the smell of pancakes, wafting through the air every morning. For years, it had been a favorite spot for locals who needed a warm meal and friendly conversation. But behind the counter, life wasn't as simple or cheerful for Emily Carter, the young waitress keeping the diner running. Emily was only 24, but her days were filled with responsibilities far beyond her age. Her father, a retired mechanic, had fallen ill months ago, leaving him bedridden and dependent on expensive medications. With no siblings to share the burden and her mother passing away years earlier, Emily became the sole provider for their tiny family. She worked tirelessly at Mama's Kitchen, often pulling double shifts just to keep food on the table and pay the mounting medical bills. The stress weighed heavily on her shoulders, but she never let it show in front of customers. To them, she was always the smiling, cheerful girl ready with a kind word or joke. On one particularly dreary evening, rain poured relentlessly outside, creating puddles along the uneven sidewalks and making the streets slick with mud. Inside the diner, things were unusually slow. Most people preferred to stay indoors during such weather, so the usual crowd of truck drivers, farmers, and late-night wanderers was missing. By 9 p.m., only 2 tables remained occupied, and both groups were finishing their meals. Emily wiped down the counters absent-mindedly, glancing at the clock every few minutes. Closing time was near and she couldn't wait to head home, even if home meant another sleepless night worrying about finances. Just as she began stacking chairs onto empty tables, the door creaked open. A gust of cold wind swept into the diner, carrying droplets of rain that splattered across the floor. Startled, Emily turned around to see a young man stepping inside. He wore an army uniform, soaked from the storm, his boots leaving faint traces of water wherever he walked. His face looked weary, but his eyes held a quiet determination. Emily quickly grabbed a menu and approached him with a polite smile. "Evening, soldier," she said warmly. "What can I get you?" The young man hesitated for a moment, scanning the nearly empty diner before settling into a booth by the window. "Just a cup of coffee, please," he replied softly, his voice tinged with exhaustion. Emily nodded and headed back to the counter. As she prepared his drink, she couldn't help but notice how thin he looked under his uniform. His hands trembled slightly as he pulled off his damp jacket and draped it over the seat beside him. Something about him tugged at her heartstrings. Maybe it was the way his shoulders slumped, as though carrying a weight too heavy for anyone to bear. Or maybe it was the faint shadows under his eyes, hinting at sleepless nights and long journeys. When she brought the steaming mug to his table, she set it down gently and gave him a reassuring smile. "Here you go. Let me know if you need anything else." He thanked her quietly, wrapping his fingers around the warm ceramic. For a while he simply sat there, staring out the rain-streaked window. Emily returned to cleaning up, occasionally glancing over to check on him. After about 10 minutes, she noticed him reaching for his wallet. He opened it slowly, rifling through its contents, but then paused, his brow furrowed as though debating something internally. Curiosity got the better of Emily, and she walked over to his table again. "Everything all right?" she asked, trying to sound casual. The young man looked up, clearly embarrassed. "Yeah, I'm fine," he muttered, though his tone suggested otherwise. "I just forgot my wallet at the barracks. Guess I'll have to come back tomorrow to pay." Emily studied him for a moment. She'd seen plenty of struggling folks come through those doors, people counting coins to cover their tab or skipping dessert because they couldn't afford it. This young man didn't strike her as someone trying to scam the system. There was honesty in his tired eyes, and the uniform spoke volumes about the sacrifices he'd made for others. Without thinking twice, Emily reached into her apron pocket and pulled out a few crumpled bills. "Don't worry about it," she said firmly, placing the money on the table. "It's on the house tonight." The soldier blinked in surprise, shaking his head. "No, ma'am, I can't let you do that. You've already done enough." "It's not much." Emily insisted, shrugging off his protests. Besides, you look like you could use a break. Consider it my way of saying thanks, for serving our country and all. For a moment, neither of them spoke. The rain continued to patter against the windows, filling the silence. Then the young man smiled, a genuine, grateful smile that reached his eyes. "Thank you," he said finally, his voice thick with emotion. "You have no idea what this means to me." Emily waved off his gratitude, returning to her tasks. She didn't think much of it after that. Acts of kindness were second nature to her, especially when it came to helping those in need. Little did she know, this seemingly ordinary interaction would set off a chain reaction that would change her life forever. As the soldier finished his coffee and prepared to leave, he stopped by the counter one last time. "I won't forget this," he told Emily, his expression serious. "People like you remind us why we fight." With that, he disappeared into the rainy night, leaving Emily to close up the diner. She locked the door behind her and trudged home, unaware that her simple gesture of generosity would soon inspire hundreds of strangers to line up, not just for a meal, but to repay the kindness she had shown. The morning after the stormy night dawned bright and clear, with sunlight streaming through the gaps in Emily's worn curtains. She woke up earlier than usual, feeling a mix of exhaustion and relief from the previous day's long shift. As she got ready for work, tying her apron around her waist and pulling her hair into a neat ponytail, she couldn't shake the memory of the young soldier who had walked into the diner just as closing time approached. His gratitude still lingered in her mind, though she dismissed it as nothing more than a fleeting moment of connection. A small act of kindness that would likely be forgotten by both of them as life moved on. When Emily arrived at Mama's kitchen, however, something felt different. The parking lot, usually empty this early in the morning, was already half full. Cars lined the curb along the street, their drivers chatting animatedly near the entrance. At first, Emily thought there must have been some sort of event nearby, a parade or festival perhaps, that had drawn a crowd to the area, but as she stepped closer, her confusion deepened. Many of the vehicles bore military decals, and several men and women in uniform stood waiting patiently outside the diner. Her heart skipped a beat. Was something wrong? Had there been an accident or emergency? Bracing herself, Emily pushed open the door and entered the diner. What greeted her inside left her speechless. A line of soldiers stretched from the counter all the way to the front door and beyond. Some sat at tables, sipping coffee and eating pancakes, while others waited quietly in line, their boots tapping rhythmically against the tiled floor. The scene was overwhelming. Rows of uniforms, crisp and clean despite the rain from the night before, filling every available space in the modest diner. Conversations buzzed softly in the background, punctuated by laughter and the clinking of silverware. It was chaos, but a warm, organized kind of chaos. "What's going on?" Emily stammered, turning to Mary, the elderly cook who had worked alongside her for years. Mary chuckled, wiping her hands on her apron. "They're here for you, sweetheart," Mary said simply, nodding toward the crowd. "Word got out about what you did last night." Emily blinked, utterly baffled. "What I did? I didn't do anything special." Mary raised an eyebrow, clearly amused by Emily's modesty. "You might not think so, but someone else clearly disagrees." Before Emily could ask more questions, a tall man in army fatigues approached her. He wore sergeant stripes on his sleeve and carried himself with an air of authority, though his smile softened his stern appearance. Extending a hand, he introduced himself. "Good morning, ma'am. I'm Sergeant Daniels," he said warmly. "We're here because of what you did for Private Ryan last night." "Private Ryan?" Emily repeated, trying to place the name. Then it clicked, the young soldier from the stormy evening. "Oh, him. I just paid for his coffee, that's all." Sergeant Daniels nodded, his expression thoughtful. "Maybe to you it was just a cup of coffee. But to Private Ryan and to all of us, it meant a lot more. He shared your story online last night, tagging local veteran groups and encouraging everyone to come support you. Looks like the message spread farther than we expected." Emily's cheeks flushed red as she glanced around the room. These strangers, soldiers, veterans, and even civilians, had shown up to repay her kindness. It was almost too much to process. She had never imagined that such a small gesture could inspire so many people to take action. As the morning wore on, the diner grew busier. Soldiers continued to pour in, some traveling from neighboring towns to show their appreciation. They ordered meals, tipped generously, and thanked Emily profusely whenever they had the chance. One group even brought flowers, presenting them to her with a card signed by dozens of names. Another handed her a gift card to a grocery store, insisting it was the least they could do. But it wasn't just the soldiers who came to show their support. Word of Emily's generosity reached the wider community as well. Local families stopped by to drop off donations, bags of groceries, cash contributions, and even handmade quilts for her father. A retired teacher offered free tutoring sessions for any children in need, should Emily ever decide to start a family of her own. Even the town mayor made an appearance, shaking Emily's hand and promising to help reduce her father's medical debt. Despite the constant influx of visitors, Emily remained in a daze. Every interaction felt surreal, like stepping into a dream where everyone was kind and generous. Yet amidst the whirlwind of activity, one thing became abundantly clear. Her simple act of paying for a stranger's meal had sparked something remarkable. People were inspired, not just to give back to her, but to emulate her example in their own lives. Throughout the day, Emily found herself recounting the story of Private Ryan over and over again. Each time she emphasized how unremarkable it had seemed to her at the time. "I didn't think twice about it," she told anyone who asked. "He looked like he needed a break, and I figured I could afford to cover a cup of coffee." Her humility only endeared her further to those around her. Strangers praised her selflessness, calling her a true hero and a reminder of humanity's goodness. Some shared their own stories of hardship and how witnessing her kindness had renewed their faith in people. Others vowed to pay it forward, spreading the ripple effect of generosity even farther. By late afternoon, the diner was running low on supplies. Plates of food disappeared faster than Mary could prepare them, and the coffee machine worked overtime to keep up with demand. Emily called in reinforcements. Her best friend Sarah arrived to help wait tables, while a neighbor volunteered to run errands for additional ingredients. Despite the hectic pace, no one complained. Instead, they laughed and joked together, united by a shared sense of purpose. As the sun began to set, casting golden light through the diner's windows, Emily finally had a moment to pause. Leaning against the counter, she surveyed the room one last time. The soldiers were beginning to leave, offering final waves and heartfelt thanks as they headed out the door. Empty plates littered the tables, and crumpled napkins lay scattered across the floor. It was messy, chaotic, and exhausting, but also beautiful in a way Emily couldn't fully articulate. For the first time in months, she allowed herself to feel hope. Hope that maybe, just maybe, things would get better, that the weight on her shoulders wouldn't crush her after all. And most importantly, hope that even in a world full of challenges and struggles, simple acts of kindness could still make a difference. Little did Emily know, this was only the beginning. The impact of her actions would continue to grow, touching lives far beyond the walls of Mama's kitchen. But for now, surrounded by grateful faces and overflowing with gratitude herself, she let herself bask in the warmth of human connection and the knowledge that she had started something extraordinary. The days following the unexpected influx of soldiers and supporters at Mama's kitchen felt like a blur to Emily. The diner, once a quiet corner of solace in her otherwise chaotic life, had transformed into a bustling hub of activity. Every morning she arrived to find new faces waiting outside, some in uniform, others in plain clothes, all eager to contribute in their own way. What started as a single act of kindness had snowballed into something far greater than Emily could have ever imagined. At first, the sheer volume of people overwhelmed her. The diner wasn't built for such large crowds, and its modest size quickly became apparent as lines stretched out onto the sidewalk. Soldiers, veterans, and civilians alike packed themselves into every available seat, while others stood patiently by the counter, chatting with one another until space opened up. Mary, the elderly cook, worked tirelessly in the kitchen, her hands moving with practiced precision as she flipped pancakes and stirred pots of soup. Even with Sarah and a few other volunteers pitching in, keeping up with the demand was no easy task. Emily found herself running back and forth between tables, taking orders, refilling coffee cups, and exchanging smiles with patrons who seemed determined to make her feel appreciated. Tips poured in. Not just loose change or crumpled bills, but envelopes stuffed with cash, checks made out to Emily Carter, and even prepaid gift cards for groceries and utilities. Each gesture, no matter how small, carried a weight of gratitude that left her speechless. Despite the whirlwind of generosity surrounding her, Emily couldn't shake the feeling of disbelief. How had one simple decision, to pay for a stranger's coffee, led to this? She had always believed in helping others when she could, but she never expected her actions to inspire such an outpouring of support. It was humbling, exhilarating, and, at times, overwhelming. There were moments when she retreated to the storage room, closing the door behind her to catch her breath and collect her thoughts. Tears pricked her eyes more often than she cared to admit, though she wiped them away quickly before returning to the floor. She didn't want anyone to see her cry, not because she was sad, but because she feared they might misunderstand. These tears weren't born of sorrow. They were tears of joy, of relief, of gratitude so profound it threatened to overwhelm her. As word of Emily's story continued to spread, the community rallied around her in ways she hadn't anticipated. Local businesses began offering their services free of charge to help keep the diner running smoothly. A plumbing company repaired a leaky sink that had been causing problems for months. An electrician replaced flickering light fixtures, ensuring the diner was bright and welcoming. Even the owner of a nearby bakery delivered fresh pastries each morning, refusing payment despite Emily's protests. One particularly memorable day, a group of carpenters showed up unannounced, tools in hand. They explained that they wanted to expand the diner's seating capacity, transforming the cramped space into something more accommodating. Within hours, they had dismantled old booths, sanded down worn surfaces, and installed new furniture donated by a local furniture store. By evening, the diner looked almost unrecognizable, a brighter, more spacious version of itself, ready to welcome even larger crowds. But perhaps the most impactful moment came when a crowdfunding campaign organized by a group of soldiers went viral. Private Ryan, the young man whose meal Emily had paid for, posted a heartfelt video online recounting the story of their encounter. He spoke about how her kindness had reminded him of why he joined the military, to protect and serve people like her. His words resonated deeply, striking a chord with viewers across the country. Donations poured in from all over, ranging from $5 contributions to thousands of dollars sent anonymously. In less than a week, the campaign raised enough money not only to cover Emily's father's medical expenses, but also to provide financial stability for her family moving forward. When Emily saw the final tally, she broke down in tears. For real this time. Her father's mounting medical bills, which had haunted her dreams and consumed her waking hours, were finally taken care of. For the first time in what felt like forever, she allowed herself to imagine a future without constant worry. She hugged Mary tightly, thanking her for sticking by her side through everything. Then she called her father, sharing the news with him over the phone. Though frail and weak, his voice trembled with emotion as he told her how proud he was of her. "You've always had a big heart, Emily," he said softly. "This is proof that good things happen to good people." Amidst the chaos and excitement, Emily made a conscious effort to connect with the individuals who came through the diner's doors. She listened intently as soldiers shared stories of their deployments. Families recounted struggles similar to hers, and strangers expressed admiration for her resilience. These conversations reinforced her belief in the power of human connection. Despite their differences, everyone who walked into Mama's kitchen shared a common thread: the desire to give back, to lift others up, and to remind each other that no one is truly alone. As the weeks passed, life began to settle into a new rhythm. While the initial wave of visitors tapered off slightly, the diner remained busier than ever. Emily hired additional staff to handle the increased workload, giving herself more time to focus on her father's care and planning for the future. She also started organizing weekly events at the diner, inviting local musicians to perform and hosting fundraising drives for families in need. Mama's Kitchen became more than just a place to grab a meal. It evolved into a cornerstone of the community, a symbol of hope and unity. Through it all, Emily never lost sight of the lesson she had learned during those whirlwind days. That, even the smallest acts of kindness can create ripples far beyond our control. She thought often about Private Ryan, wondering where he was now and whether he realized the magnitude of what he had set in motion. Whenever doubt crept in, she reminded herself of the faces she had seen in the diner, the laughter, the tears, the shared moments of humanity, and knew that her decision to pay for that cup of coffee had been worth it. Though her life had changed, dramatically, Emily remained grounded. She refused to let fame or attention go to her head, instead focusing on how she could continue making a difference. Every morning, as she tied her apron and stepped behind the counter, she carried with her the knowledge that kindness has the power to transform lives, including her own. And as long as Mama's Kitchen stood, she vowed to keep that spirit alive, one warm meal and one grateful smile at a time. With the immediate financial burdens lifted and her father's medical expenses fully covered, Emily found herself stepping into a new chapter of her life, one filled with opportunities she had never dared to dream of. The overwhelming support from the community, the soldiers, and strangers across the country didn't just ease her struggles. It ignited a fire within her to give back in ways that went beyond serving meals at Mama's Kitchen. What started as a simple act of kindness had transformed her into an unexpected beacon of hope, and she was determined to honor that responsibility. One of the first changes Emily noticed was how people began treating her, not just as a waitress or a struggling young woman, but as someone who inspired them. Local newspapers ran stories about her, calling her the waitress who changed a town and a symbol of generosity. Schools invited her to speak at assemblies, where wide-eyed students listened intently as she shared her journey. At first, public speaking terrified her. Standing in front of crowds wasn't something she'd ever imagined doing, but she quickly realized that her words carried weight. Parents told her afterward how their children came home eager to help others, inspired by her example. Teachers reported seeing acts of kindness blossom among students, sharing lunches, helping classmates with homework, and even organizing fundraisers for causes they cared about. Emily also became a regular guest at veteran events, honoring the very people who had once lined up outside her diner to repay her kindness. She attended ceremonies, parades, and memorials, standing shoulder to shoulder with soldiers and families who had sacrificed so much. Her presence meant something to them, a reminder that civilians appreciated their service and understood the weight of their sacrifices. In return, they embraced her like one of their own, inviting her to barbecues, holiday gatherings, and retirement parties. These connections deepened her appreciation for the military community and reinforced her belief in the power of mutual respect and gratitude. But perhaps the most significant transformation occurred within Mama's Kitchen itself. With donations pouring in and volunteers eager to lend a hand, Emily decided to turn the diner into more than just a place to eat. She envisioned it as a hub for charity and compassion, a space where anyone in need could find refuge. Every Sunday she hosted community meals, offering free food to low-income families, homeless individuals, and anyone else who needed a warm plate and a friendly face. Word spread quickly, and soon, lines formed outside the diner each weekend. Volunteers, from teenagers earning community service hours to retired seniors looking to stay active, pitched in to cook, serve, and clean up. It became a true team effort, bringing together people from all walks of life under one roof. Emily also partnered with local organizations to host fundraising events at the diner. One month, proceeds went toward building a playground for underprivileged kids. Another time, funds were raised to send care packages to troops overseas. Each event drew larger crowds than the last, not because of flashy promotions or expensive marketing campaigns, but because people genuinely wanted to be part of something meaningful. They saw Mama's Kitchen as a place where good things happened, where ordinary people came together to make extraordinary impacts, Her efforts extended beyond the diner, too. Emily began visiting schools, shelters, and hospitals, sharing her story and encouraging others to embrace kindness in their daily lives. She spoke candidly about her struggles, the sleepless nights worrying about money, the fear of losing her father, the constant pressure of trying to hold everything together, and how one small decision had changed everything. Kindness doesn't have to cost you anything, she often said during these talks. It's not about grand gestures or big sacrifices. Sometimes it's as simple as paying for someone's coffee or holding the door open for a stranger. You never know how much it might mean to them. Her message resonated deeply, especially with those who felt invisible or overlooked. A single mother confided in her after a school event, saying she'd been inspired to start volunteering at a food bank after hearing Emily's story. An elderly man approached her at a veterans gathering, tears streaming down his face, thanking her for reminding him that there was still goodness in the world. Even complete strangers reached out to her on social media, sharing how her journey had motivated them to perform random acts of kindness in their own communities. As her influence grew, so did her responsibilities. Emily received invitations to speak at conferences and nonprofit galas, sometimes traveling to neighboring states to share her experiences. Though she enjoyed meeting new people and spreading her message, she always made sure to keep her roots firmly planted in her hometown. No matter how far she traveled or how many accolades she received, she returned to Mama's kitchen every week, tying on her apron and serving meals alongside her team. To her, the diner would always be the heart of everything she did, a tangible reminder of where her journey began. Despite her growing fame, Emily remained humble and grounded. She refused to let success change who she was at her core. When reporters asked her what advice she had for others hoping to make a difference, she simply smiled and said, "Be kind. That's it. Just be kind, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard." Her father, now recovering thanks to the reduced stress and improved medical care, watched her transformation with pride. He often sat in a corner booth at the diner sipping tea and observing the lively atmosphere around him. On quieter days, he pulled Emily aside to tell her how amazed he was by what she had accomplished. "You've always had a big heart," he said one afternoon, his voice thick with emotion. "I'm just glad the rest of the world finally sees it." Though her life had taken a dramatic turn, Emily knew that none of it would have been possible without the chain reaction sparked by her decision to pay for Private Ryan's coffee. That moment had set off a ripple effect, touching countless lives, including her own. As she looked around the bustling diner, filled with laughter, conversation, and the comforting aroma of freshly brewed coffee, she felt a profound sense of gratitude. Gratitude for the soldiers who had shown up to repay her kindness, gratitude for the community that had rallied around her, and gratitude for the realization that even in the darkest moments, a single act of compassion could shine a light, bright enough to guide her and others toward hope. For Emily, this was only the beginning. She knew there was still so much work to be done, so many people to help, and so many stories yet to unfold. But as long as Mama's kitchen stood, and as long as she continued to believe in the power of kindness, she was ready to face whatever came next. As the months turned into years, Emily's life continued to evolve in ways she could never have predicted. Mama's kitchen had become more than just a diner. It was now a cornerstone of the community, a place where people gathered not only for meals but also for connection, support, and inspiration. The ripple effect of her kindness had grown far beyond what anyone, including Emily herself, could have imagined. Yet even as her story reached new heights, she remained steadfast in her mission, to pay it forward and inspire others to do the same. One of the most profound changes in Emily's life was how deeply embedded she became in the lives of those around her. Soldiers who had once lined up outside her diner to repay her kindness stayed in touch, becoming lifelong friends. Private Ryan, whose cup of coffee had sparked this entire journey, remained particularly close to her heart. They exchanged letters regularly, and he often sent updates about his deployments and adventures overseas. During one holiday season, he surprised her by showing up at Mama's kitchen unannounced, wearing civilian clothes and carrying a bouquet of flowers. Their reunion brought tears to her eyes, not just because of the joy of seeing him again, but because it reminded her of how interconnected their lives had become. The bond between Emily and the military community deepened over time. She organized annual events at the diner to honor veterans and active duty personnel, hosting barbecues, pancake breakfasts, and holiday feasts. These gatherings weren't just celebrations. They were opportunities for storytelling and healing. Veterans shared their experiences with younger generations, while families expressed gratitude for the sacrifices made on their behalf. For many, these events provided a sense of belonging, a reminder that they were valued and supported long after their service ended. Beyond the diner, Emily expanded her efforts to help those in need. With the financial stability she had gained, she established a nonprofit organization called Kindness in Action, dedicated to assisting struggling families and individuals facing hardships similar to hers. Through partnerships with local businesses, schools, and charities, the organization provided everything from rent assistance and groceries to job training programs and educational scholarships. The name itself reflected Emily's philosophy. Kindness wasn't passive. It required action, intention, and effort. Every initiative launched under Kindness in Action bore the mark of Emily's personal touch. She insisted on meeting recipients face-to-face whenever possible, sitting down with them to listen to their stories and understand their challenges. This approach allowed her to forge genuine connections, ensuring that no one felt like just another case or statistic. Her empathy and humility resonated deeply with those she helped, inspiring them to pass along the kindness they received. Her influence extended far beyond her hometown. Invitations to speak at national conferences and events poured in, taking her across the country to share her message of hope and compassion. At each stop, she emphasized the importance of small, everyday actions. "You don't have to change the world all at once," she would say during her speeches. "Start with one person, one moment, one act of kindness. That's enough. Because when you do, you create ripples that spread farther than you can imagine." Her words struck a chord with audiences of all ages and backgrounds. A young boy in Texas started leaving handwritten notes of encouragement in library books after hearing her story. A retired teacher in Ohio began volunteering at a homeless shelter, determined to make a difference in her community. Even corporations took notice, incorporating lessons from Emily's journey into their employee training programs and corporate social responsibility initiatives. Everywhere she went, people told her how her story had inspired them to take action, to be kinder, braver, and more compassionate. Back home, Mama's Kitchen thrived as both a business and a symbol of unity. Emily updated the interior, adding murals painted by local artists depicting scenes of community and resilience. One wall featured portraits of soldiers who had visited the diner, accompanied by quotes about courage and sacrifice. Another showcased messages of gratitude from patrons, written on colorful post-it notes. The atmosphere buzzed with warmth and positivity, drawing visitors from neighboring towns and even tourists passing through. On Sundays, the diner transformed into a bustling hub of generosity during its community meals program. Families brought homemade dishes to contribute, while musicians performed live music in exchange for tips donated directly to charity. Children ran around laughing, playing games set up in a corner designated as the Kids' Corner. It was chaotic, lively, and utterly beautiful, a testament to the power of collective effort and shared purpose. Emily's father, now healthier and happier, played an active role in the diner's activities. He greeted customers with a warm smile, regaling them with tales of Emily's childhood mischief and reminding everyone how proud he was of the woman she had become. His presence added another layer of charm to the diner, making it feel like a true family affair. Despite her success, Emily never lost sight of her roots. She continued working shifts behind the counter, chatting with regulars and ensuring every guest felt welcome. To her, staying grounded was essential. Fame and recognition were fleeting, but the impact of kindness endured. She often reflected on how her life might have turned out differently, if not for that rainy night when she decided to pay for Private Ryan's coffee. Would she still be struggling alone, overwhelmed by debt and despair? Or would someone else have stepped in to offer her the same lifeline she had given him? The answer didn't matter. What mattered was that she had chosen to act, to trust in the goodness of humanity and believe that even the smallest gestures could make a difference. And because of that choice, countless lives, including her own, had been forever changed. As Emily stood behind the counter one evening, watching the sunset paint the sky in hues of orange and pink, she felt a profound sense of peace. The diner hummed with activity around her, filled with laughter, conversation, and the clinking of silverware. Outside, a line of people waited patiently to enter, eager to experience the magic of Mama's kitchen for themselves. In that moment, Emily realized something important. Kindness wasn't just an act. It was a cycle. Every time someone paid it forward, the chain grew stronger, reaching farther and touching more lives. She had started this particular cycle years ago with a single cup of coffee, but it had since spiraled outward, creating connections and transforming communities in ways she could never have anticipated. With a soft smile, Emily tied her apron tighter and returned to work. There were tables to clear, orders to take, and stories to hear. Life at Mama's kitchen was busy, chaotic, and unpredictable, but it was also full of love, hope, and endless possibilities. As long as she kept paying it forward, she knew the ripple effects would continue spreading, inspiring others to do the same. And so Emily's journey carried on, not as a waitress, a speaker, or a nonprofit founder, but as a living example of the power of kindness. In a world often divided by differences, she proved that simple acts of compassion could unite us all.